everyone, welcome back to our channel. This is the official second episode of Spirit Box Session.
Woo!
Woo! My name is Sophia. I run this channel. If you are new here, I am a film student graduate. I studied film, particularly horror, particularly extreme cinema. Extreme cinema.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm Sophia's older sister. I am a forever student, I would say. I predominantly research in the criminology and psychology fields, and we both love watching horror movies. That's why we're here. That's why we get together, so we can talk about horror movies and have a little bit more of an academic conversation about them.
Yes, so if this is your first episode, our goal here is to delve deeper into some of our favorite horror movies, kind of uncover some messages, and look further into the political, cultural, historical, criminal, mise-en-scène, cinematography, like everything. Just anything and everything that we can think of that we find interesting.
Yes, so as Sophia said, this is our second video. If you haven't seen our first one, check it out. We did Cabin in the Woods. And now for our second video, we're going to talk about
The Purge.
Ooh.
The very first one that came into theaters in 2013. For those of you who haven't seen The Purge or just need a brief recap, here is what The Purge is about. Purge takes place in a dystopian America where all crime, including murder, is legal for, it's 12 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's 12 hours.
Sorry, 24 hours.
Is it
the
24
full
hours?
day. Yeah, it's the full day.
What?
Was it 12?
I thought it was they close at 7 p.m.
And then
start
start
at 7 a.m.
Maybe it is 12 hours. I just thought it was like a full,
Yeah, me too. Great start. Anyway, everything is legal for 12 hours. In this film, we follow a upscale white family where the father, Ethan Hawke, don't ask me to remember character names, it's going to be Ethan Hawke and that's it. He is known for selling the security systems during the Purge or setting them up. So we follow this family and the Purge falls upon them, and as they're locked up all cushy and nice, there's a black homeless gentleman that stumbles down the street and is basically like, I need help or this other group of white people is going to kill me. And the son, I'm pretty sure his name is Henry.
Charlie.
No!
Close. So close.
I'll get it one day, guys.
So close.
Charlie sees the black guy and actually lets him into the house. And this starts the chaos. While that's going on, though, upstairs you have the daughter, Zoe, and her boyfriend stayed behind to stay with her during the Purge. But he also had other motives, and his plan was to stay behind to talk to Ethan Hawke because he wasn't letting them see each other enough. So his plan was actually to participate in the Purge and kill her father on that night. Now you have this unknown black man in the house and the boyfriend who was actually shot and killed by Ethan Hawke. Well, the black man escapes and is running around the house and it's kind of pandemonium. Our main villains show up, and this is the group of masked assailants looking for this homeless man, and they are trying to get Ethan Hawke to bring him out, or they're going to come in and kill everyone.
So this is important just to say, they're called the Strangers, and the reason why I want to say the name of the group is because I think it's the fourth movie, we learn a little bit more about them too.
Yes, I like how the subtitle said polite strangers. I'm like,
yeah, polite. Sure.
The polite strangers end up breaking into the house, and it's kind of a war between the polite strangers and Ethan Hawke's family. After all is said and done, Ethan Hawke is, spoiler alert, murdered. Before the polite strangers can kill his wife, though, three groups
Well, it's
Three
like all the
couples.
neighbors. Yeah, so
Yeah,
three couples, but like all the neighbors.
The neighbors actually come into the house and kill the polite strangers. And we think, okay, here we go, the saviors. However, these neighbors are also here for the purge and have decided that they're going to kill Ethan Hawke's family. And they attempt to do so, and then the family is saved by the black homeless man that was able to escape from the the chair that Ethan Hawke tied him to, and he actually saves the family. And the ending exchange is so well done, where she just like subtly says thank you, and he just says like good luck after all that. Crazy. Fantastic movie. Anyway, the wife and 2 children do survive, but Ethan Hawke dies at the end, and that kind of concludes the end of The Purge. That's kind of the general idea. Anything to add?
No, that's great. Yeah, great overview of it. So I kind of wanted to start right at the beginning. I just thought this was a really cool piece of imagery right at the beginning when they're talking about the blue Baptista flowers. So if you put the blue Baptista flowers outside your house, it basically symbolizes that you support the purge, right? So we see right at the very beginning that all the neighbors are putting this out. Don't forget your flowers, you bring them out. So you're symbolizing that you support the purge. But as Sophia said, we're focusing on these individuals from the upper class part of the community. So they're all in these gated homes. They're all going to plan to get into lockdown. And so they're expressing their support, but they're not actually participating, right? So there's a little bit of hypocrisy there. But the reason why I bring up the flowers is because I was like, that's interesting. Like, why these flowers? So I decided to look into that a little bit more. And these flowers are mostly associated with witchcraft and femininity, which I was like, okay, that's interesting. I wonder why, that was brought up. So I did a little bit more research into that, and it came back with these flowers being associated with Saturnalia. So if you're not aware of this, Saturnalia is a pagan holiday, and it is associated with like one of the first ever purges. It took place in the Roman times, and it was basically a free-for-all for their slaves at the time to commit any sort of illegal acts during this holiday that took place, this festival that took place. So these flowers call back to kind of that historical period of time of like, a pagan celebratory of, we're going to just go out and do whatever we want to do. So I don't know if you caught that or if you were interested, but that was something that right off the bat, I was like, I need to know more about that.
Interesting. I did not know about the flowers, but unfortunately, you did delve into one of my fun facts.
I'm so sorry.
Which I will tell you now as we are on the topic, and it is irrelevant. So, the funny thing about the title, or like when you go to read the summary, the Purge movie is classified as a dystopian action horror. Okay? Is it really a dystopian though? The Purge is supposed to be a fictional event, but you are correct. Something of the Purge has occurred in history before, which is so crazy because, when you watch these types of movies, you're thinking, could this ever happen to us? Well, it has happened to us. Maybe obviously not in our generation, but this is a real event that happened. People did this stuff. It is called the Saturnalia.
Saturnalia, yeah.
And it occurred once a year in ancient Rome, and people could do whatever they want for a week, including murder. Sound familiar? It ended around 497 BC. And I wrote underneath, could history ever repeat itself?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question, though, because actually I found an article that there was a purge-like instance in recent history in Brazil. It was like 3 days of pure anarchy. There was riots in the streets. The stat I saw that crime rose 650% because it was just like pure pandemonium. So in that sense, yeah, the people that, you know, did not want to get any sort of involvement with the riots or what was happening at the time in Brazil, it was again a period of political unrest, some economic problems, of course some structural and racial inequalities that were going on that kind of like catapulted it, like made way for all that to happen. But yeah, we have seen it happen before in Brazil. So like, if it's happened in recent history, I would agree with you. This isn't really a dystopian film.
Yeah, I agree. I was really thinking about this going, what makes this film dystopian? What makes it dystopian? The idea?
Yeah.
Like, really, because a government comes over, a government comes and says, you know, our world is so bad, crime is so bad, all this stuff is so bad, we're going to make it better, and here's how we're going to make it better. Well, that's like any government, but then really the only dystopian aspect is, you know, all crime being legal. But is it really dystopian? Is it really dystopian, you know?
I kind of want to flip your question the other way, because I think the only aspect of the movie that was dystopian was the fact that they got unemployment and crime rates to drop to like under 1% for the rest of the year. Like, having unemployment rates under 1% is phenomenal, and just that in itself is dystopian to me, you know?
So true. And I also wanted to talk about this idea of the purge itself, because as I was saying, is it really dystopian? People, especially in America, where gun laws, I'm not just saying this is just a problem in America, but because Canada and America are such in large proximity and we are in Canada, we get a lot of news from America. So this is not us, you know, criticizing, it's more just like...
No, I'm okay to say. I'll criticize this gun laws in the States.
True, like this is the news that we get, right? So the idea of the purge is that you go out and you cleanse yourself, right? You can purge and get out your frustrations and all that fun stuff. But the reason why I said is this really dystopian is because leading up to this movie, this was kind of already happening, just at a more individual level. And not like crime being legal for 24 hours, but people were picking up their guns, picking up what they had, and putting their frustrations out into the world. And this is what I really wanted to talk about really quickly. In 2012 and 2013, the movie came out in 2013, so I'm sure one of these events wasn't a main cause, but this movie was definitely in pre-production during this time. 3 of the biggest news events coming out of America were horrendous. In 2012, we had the movie theater shooting at the Batman premiere.
Oh, yeah.
Horrifying. I think the gunman killed 12 people, so many more were injured. Also in 2012, we had the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting.
Right.
Oh my god. If that wasn't everywhere on the news. And then I don't remember which month this was, but in 2013, we had the Boston Marathon bombings. 3 massive news stories that were covered extensively. So that's why I say, is this really dystopian? Because people were already picking up guns and with all their repressed aggression, and they were just going out and purging. Really.
Yeah. Which kind of highlights kind of the one big takeaways I had walking away from the purge was like the value of human life, right? Because they talk a lot about like the right to life, your right to purge, but at the same time that they're saying, yeah, you have the right within this time period to go and murder people and get all your anger and frustration out. But like, we still have the law, you know, there's still, it's that like juxtaposition between the right to life versus the right of the law. And it's almost this underpinned belief that the purge is made to get rid of people that they believe have no value in the society, right? So how are we putting value on people? Is it like a price? Like, are you contributing X amount to the economy, therefore you have value? Are you contributing X amount of ideas, so therefore you have value? So that's why I thought that was an interesting, and absolutely, like the way that you framed it with like the big news articles that are coming out at that time is, that value of life. Like everyone is, important, everyone is made, and they have value innately. But people are going away and going out there and taking that away from them.
Yeah. 100%. I even said, like, you're right. I even wrote down here, the eradication of non-contributing members of society. That's what this is, right? Like,
but how are we defining non-contributing,
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Right? That's the labels that they're putting on this, and you're right to say, how could you label somebody as non-contributing member?
Yeah.
Which goes into my next.
But sorry, really quickly, I just wanted to jump in on that because even with the right to life, we know, like, so Canada, we've got our own constitution. Americans got their own sort of constitution, but the different clauses that they hit on. So there seems to be like a priority of the freedom to act and the freedom of speech in this purge like situation, which seems to trump or seems to sacrifice the protection of law and the protection to life, because you have a right to life, you have the right to feel protected, to abide by the law. But in this, like we said, this very short time period, people can say whatever they want to do whatever they want to do. They can commit murder, right? So how does this outweigh the other? And they justify it like, oh, the rest of the year you're not allowed to commit murder. It's just this one short time period. So like, and again, we can get into the inequalities that come along with that and why this is such a big problem. But yeah, it's just an interesting thing to see, like, okay, so we got all these rules and laws, but just kidding, no, we're not going to do that on this period of night.
Yeah.
But yeah, go ahead, jump into your next point.
Oh, no problem. I totally agree. And the next thing goes over like what I mean, or what the movie covers in terms of non-contributing member to society, or power over. I say power over, so men have power over women in the showing of, in the movie, patriarchal possessiveness. Then you have white people's power over black people's power, even within like the segregated housing that they have. And then you have the rich over poor, which is things like the white supremacy, which is mentioned many times throughout the film. Even Ethan Hawke says in one of his lines, things like this are not supposed to happen in our neighborhood. Right? That's a pretty heavy sentence if you break it down and look at it within this power context.
Absolutely. And that stratification, of course, was another big takeaway for me too. And yeah, I echo what you were saying. Men over women, white people over black people, rich over poor. But specifically in this first movie, it's that stratification between rich and poor, right? Right off the bat, we can see Ethan Hawke's character is the person that's designing all these security systems, right? He's making money off of the fact that people need to invest in these security systems to protect themselves during the purge. So at the end, when the neighbors flip and say, no, we're here to kill you, you built that renovation because, that's our money that paid for it. Yeah, that's fair, He did make money off of them. And again, this feeds into a whole capitalist society of like, at the end of the day, it's still not right. But like, of course, yeah, we can absolutely see it. There was a little snippet on the radio right at the beginning when we're doing the whole flower thing too. And a radio caller calls in and she's like, I don't feel like it's very fair. Like there's like an innate inequity here, right? Because people that are homeless or people don't have any resources aren't going to be able to protect themselves tonight. And the radio host just shuts her down and says, well, everyone's entitled to their opinion, and moves on to the next caller. And it's such a quick snippet, but like that absolutely summarizes the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, I didn't catch that. I don't know what I was doing. Was it close to the beginning of the movie?
Yes.
Was I getting a snack?
Maybe.
Perhaps. That's definitely a possibility. There's a common theme You usually miss the first 5 minutes.
But even this calls into mind the class warfare, right? So there again is that vulnerability of racialized, lower income communities. They're higher prone to violence. They're less prone to getting sort of any sort of resources to help with protection or access resource that will help in terms of healthcare or treatment or trauma support. So yeah, absolutely. This, it's not so much as you're on an equal playing ground for the purge. No, you're not. If you can afford to lock yourself away, like that's a huge privilege.
Absolutely. And like, even when our villains, the polite strangers, do come to the house, we never get a reason as to why he wants this homeless man. Why? Because he's lower class?
Yeah, probably because he was just there.
Like, that's so crazy to me. This team of people really went out just to eradicate the non-contributing members of, right? Like,
yeah.
Oh my God, this poor gentleman probably didn't do anything, but he just didn't have the means.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because you said the bad guys, as in the purgers.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you. No, this is not a quiz. This is not a quiz. I just want to know where your head's at. I won't. But in a research article I was looking into A Nation Reborn, Right to Law and Right to Life in the Purge franchise, there's this really interesting quote that I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on, okay?
Okay.
So it's this one. The monsters of the Purge franchise are typically not the individual purgers, but the night itself. The purgers are simply a product of the purge. And if you want to look into the article, like, we can obviously link it for you. It's on page 388. But just what you said in terms of the purgers themselves being the bad guys, like, do you agree with this quote or not, and why do you think that is? So that's the quote there if you want to reread it.
So I do agree with this quote, and I do have a little bullet point here that I wrote down. This is kind of where I was getting at. This is what I wrote. Ordinary people willing to protect and support one another in the face of a political system abandoning them. A lot of the purges do have a common theme. I think that, there's two common themes that I see. The American dream is dead, and the saving grace throughout the film is collective action. So
that's
good
a good one.
versus the true evil.
Yeah.
So I say bad guys as in, like, I guess worse than Ethan Hawke, because Ethan Hawke's family isn't really looking to go out and kill people that night, but really the bad people is the system that was put in place to allow this to happen.
Yeah.
The politics of it, and that's the bad. That's where, like, if we get into purge election year, those people that created this highly profit off this, and even, I could go off, there's like a bunch of things that happen in election year, but one of the guys even takes donations from a gun company. But that's besides the point. Those people are the bad. The system is the bad. The purges themselves, you're right, are supporting the bad in a way, but they themselves aren't the cause. They're not the true evil, as I would call it.
So, yeah, I think those are great points to make, absolutely. I really like your point about the collective action piece. And just watching the film, yes, I would agree with that completely. But taking a step back a little bit, I kind of disagree with this as well, because this system was put in place, right? The system is allowing people to commit murder. But at the end of the day, it is the purgers that I think are evil, because not everyone is participating in the purge. You still have a right and you still have a choice if you want to participate and kill people or not. For sure, right, we can go into, like, people's motivations as to why they would join the purge, or the inherent anger people may have, or, there's other factors that contribute to it. But at the end of the day, Ethan Hawke's family chose to stay inside and lock down. The neighbors chose to throw a party that night. And like in subsequent purges, people throw block parties, people hang out at the church, you know, there's a group of people, I think it's Purge Anarchy, that are first responders that go out and help people that night. So we see the good in people, and I think the only reason why the purge actually continues on is because there are the people that participate, right? If the collective action piece was, no, like screw you, screw the government, we're not going to participate in your games, then, you know, the purge would be a huge flop. So, I don't know. I absolutely understand with what you're saying, because for sure reading that first, that quote there, and right off the bat, I was like, yeah, for sure, it makes sense. But kind of delving down a little deeper and pulling in some psychology into it, like people still have the right for their choice to participate or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I agree. It's hard because there is still within, like you said, the individual people, there is still that good and evil divide that we're going to have. As you see in later movies, some people that participate in the purge have no choice. They're sitting on their roofs, not afraid to shoot somebody for looting their store, for example.
That's true too.
Right? And sure, they're participating, but really they're participating because the system is forcing them to participate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through the bad individuals that are going to participate.
Because at the end of the day, you're right, they still need to protect their livelihood. That's their store, like that's how they make their money. Absolutely. So I absolutely get, like, it's, the system has betrayed the most the average person in society. And I'm not saying that I'm anticipating a whole world of people that are just not going to do any bad things, right? Like, they're going to revolt against the purge, because there's always going to be some people that, you know, align with this sort of ideology. So I get that that in itself is a dystopian fantasy, but at the end of the day, I just would reiterate that you're choosing to participate in the purge for one reason or another, a bad reason or a good reason, or however you seem to justify it to yourself.
Right. I have a film point.
Ooh, okay.
Something that is a little interesting topic, and I'll back it up with a scene. Something that I studied was this notion, and you hear it within video games as well, like people will criticize video games with it. And it's this idea of catharsis being linked to violence.
Interesting.
And because we're talking about even like politically, you know, maybe repressed anger and upset, not good feelings toward the government and all that energy and aggressiveness.
Yeah.
I think this film does a fantastic job with tackling this catharsis and violent film idea. So if you as an individual might have like some anger, or you know, you're not very good at expressing feelings, you might be one to listen to, and this is like a stereotype, but it is true. You talk about this in film theory. You know, in music, you're going to lean towards the heavier stuff. In film, you're going to lean towards something that desensitizes you. You want to see that violence on screen, and you get a release out of that. So these films are telling us that these acts of violence are bad. However, audiences can get catharsis from watching violence, imagining themselves within the violence as an assailant or victim. And this can help you actually blow off steam and frustrations, which is really interesting. In terms of film style, this actually matches really well. There's a scene where Ethan Hawke is struggling with the homeless man. The family all find each other, and they like have a little squabble. It's such an angsty, like a perfectly filmed angsty scene. It's tense. There's not a lot of clarity. If you look at it, it's like distorted sound, a shaky cam, everything's slightly blurred, filmed within the frame, but a tight frame, so it's like blurry, and that's where you get the stuffiness. So in a way, the film, you're able to put yourself within that situation because of how it's filmed. And once that that tense moment is over, you can feel some sort of release from being within that action and the violence, and that's why like catharsis is linked to it, because you can kind of be within that frustration and step out of it.
That's cool to know, right? Because I'm not a film student, so that's not something I'd be trained to see.
Yeah, I just find it interesting because a lot of people or critics will criticize like video games,
Yeah.
or seeing violence on YouTube, or violence is linked to this. Sure, some violence is linked to this, but also violence can be a way to release that energy.
Yeah,
Like seeing
absolutely.
that, and so you can regain your yes.
The only problem is the desensitization that comes with that.
That's
if you're
the
used
thing.
to seeing so much blood and murder and gore, like, I mean, that can't be good either, right? I get it, we know that, video games don't contribute to, especially school shootings, but like, you have to ask yourself, like, there's so much else going on in the world. Like, it's just kind of a perfect storm, right, of everything that's happening.
Yeah.
It's a lot of anger, so I get it as a catharsis, especially to watching it, because, you and I watch horror movies, and we're not serial killers, just to say.
Not yet,
So,
at least.
No. But, like, yeah, if you have a bad day, come home and watch a horror movie, like, yeah, if that's your cup of tea, I think that there would be some value in it, like you were saying, absolutely.
Yeah, and I just think it's such a perfect movie to do that, because this is a film talking about like political nature and people, the system and how unfair the system is, the death of the American dream, and then here at home, if we're frustrated about the political system and whatnot, you watch this film that really mirrors your frustrations.
Yeah, for sure. Especially because it's so much commentary on like the political and structural inequalities that are going on, and I know this is a fictional movie, and I think that the movie received a lot of bad reviews right at the beginning because of the fact of people were calling it out and saying like, oh, that's not the real America, and they weren't trying to make a real America film. But, I mean, they kind of were, if you really unpack it, like we have been. So, yeah, if you are a person that's, been victimized by these sorts of structures already put in place by society, there's many of them, and there's many intersections of them as well, then of course, yeah, you're going to feel that the system is failing you all the time. And watching something like this, you're like, yeah, this is exactly what we mean, So I have one more point, too, to make.
Sure.
So 9/11, 2011 happened, and this movie came out in 2013. And what I think the movie does a good job at is talking about threat. So I would say there's two types of threats that are addressed in the movie: internal threat and external threat. So the external threat that we're trained to believe is terrorists. I'm going to put that in quotes because, I mean, that's a whole topic that we can unpack. But after 9/11, it was always the external threat against America, right? People are coming to attack America.
Yeah.
In this movie, we still kind of see it start off as an external threat, right? People are trying to get into your house. You've locked down the house, right? You want to keep everyone else out. But then there's also the paradox of, okay, but what's going on inside your home? There's still that internal threat. When Zoe's boyfriend tries to kill Ethan Hawke's character, when they let in the homeless man, and now they're trying to hunt him down. Now the outside is breached, right? So that safety and security has been taken away, and now it's an internal threat. Where you're supposed to feel safest, in your home, is no longer safe. And now they're feeling like anyone else that has been a part of or impacted by the purge, right? Who doesn't have that safety or security. That safety and security is, in this movie, a privilege to have.
Absolutely. That's a good point about internal threat. It's not just about locking down, and how can you trust? Where, like, it's so horrifying already that the world, you're trying to save yourself from the world, but what happens when it's in your house and right beside you?
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole other situation.
Absolutely. And I have another question for you.
Oh.
So, sorry. Right at the end of the movie, you see the mother and the two daughters, or the daughter and the son, on the stoop. They've survived the purge, all's well. The mother made the decision not to kill the neighbors, even though they were so ready to kill the family. And I felt like that kind of showed some resilience and resistance or it's made to show the resilience and resistance of the family to survive that night. But how did you feel leaving that movie? Like, what was the ending like for you? Did you feel like it was a hopeful ending? How did you walk away from that last scene, do you think?
I felt that it was a very realistic ending.
Okay, that's fair.
Like, even in some horror movies that are coming up, I feel like they're all trying to lead up to this big, epic finale. Something has to happen.
Yeah.
Or, like, we all watched The Nun, with the friggin' holy hand grenade, and it's a whole production. But this film, and that's why I said I think the ending is so brilliant, where she says, "Thank you." And he doesn't say, "You're welcome," Hollywood moment, like,
got you.
freaking, like, whole thing. He says, "Good luck."
Mm-hmm.
That is so, like, it's brilliant writing. That is realistic. That's an interaction that very much does happen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And not that I thought it was hopeful, but I do agree with, like, the resilience of a family 100%, because, she still did lose things.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, it was just kind of like the world goes on.
Yeah.
He walks out of the house, life goes on.
But, like, to what end, We know that the same thing's gonna happen next year.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm glad that you had that takeaway, because I always get angry watching the end of The Purge, because I don't find it as a resilience or resistance takeaway, because we know that this is happening. Like, again, this goes right back to the structural issues that are pretty well alive in this. Yeah, sure, you survived the purge. The radio announcers right after the purge sirens go off and now is the long 364 days to the next purge, right? They're already counting it down to the next one. I don't like the fact, and I know that this may be a reality for some, but the fact that you have to go through something so traumatic or so intense to gain a different perspective or to gain that resilience. Everyone has some form of resilience or resistance to things, absolutely. But to have to go through something so traumatic as, in this case, like experiencing the purge and having your husband get killed, like, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the fact that ending it on the resilience, like, we survived the purge, whereas we know, like, they were very privileged through that whole movie. If the kid didn't open up the door, they would have been fine. This would have been like a 2-minute movie.
You wouldn't have had a movie.
So I personally felt a little angry by the fact of, like, we did it, we survived, gang. And you're like, well, yeah, because at the end of the day, you still had, like, the security of your house for most of the movie.
Fair, valid.
But I do get what you're saying, absolutely. And, like, I still think it still feeds into this whole, like, Hollywood notion of, we need to tie up some loose ends,
Yeah, what I would be curious and what would make me maybe change my opinion or to see, because obviously the purges are all, like, there's the first purge, like, there's a couple of them. I would love to know, I don't remember if they said which purge number this was. They're like, welcome back to the something.
Oh, that's a good point.
Purge of America. I would be interested to know what it is, because at the beginning of an event like this, And as you see in the later purges where people do start to rebel, if it's one of the first couple purges, what can you as an individual really do to rebel against the system? Right?
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I would say, like, yeah, can't really do much about it, right?
Yeah.
The world goes on because that's how the world is at that moment. Nobody's really
Questioning
questioning it
Yeah.
just yet.
Yeah, no, I
Which
agree
we get
with
in
you.
the later movies. But, like, if this was, like, the 100 and something purge, I'd be like, alright, like, come on, guys. But if we're
Yeah.
near the beginning, my view would still be like, okay, it's hard to be an individual fighting this system at this time.
As an individual.
As an individual.
Yeah, because you're right, because this is the first one, and then there's Purge Anarchy, and then the last one, the fourth one, is Purge, the first Purge. So, like, they do kind of in random order, so it seems. And then they get to the first Purge, where they kind of explain, like, how this all started, and it's, like, a project on Manhattan Island. And they, like, pay people to participate, and since they're not participating, and we can talk about this when we actually, if we choose to talk about that purge, but, like, they send in the military to start, like, stirring up people in that first one. So you're right, like, it's not that it was suggested by the people. This is suggested by the state. This is the state's way of inflicting power. And that's why we see a lot of the oppression and the resistance. When you're talking about the collective action, that's the resistance of the people that are like, no, we're going to fight the system.
Yeah.
But then with the state imposing all the rules and the state actually the one driving a lot of the purging, then yeah, we see that it's the oppression of certain groups of people. They're trying to eradicate them. Like,
Yeah.
When the strangers come in, like, the first thing he says was the homeless swine, right? Which feeds into the whole propaganda of, like, equating the lesser people of society as, like, rodents and roaches and swine and, dirty things. Which we know, like, they're still people. They still have value. They still exist in the world. You can't assign them those sorts of characteristics.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I don't have to do fun facts today.
I like your fun facts.
Alright, we can do the fun facts. I'll speed run the fun facts because Emily already spoiled the first one.
Sorry, guys. So sorry.
Okay, fact number 2. What I found interesting, which is kind of gone along with everything we've said too, the opening footage that I saw before I went to go get my snack.
Oh my gosh.
The first couple, so all the surveillance footage, that is actually real footage. That was not filmed by directors. That was real footage.
Wow.
Most of the footage is from 1992 during the Los Angeles riots, where the Korean Americans, they used to sit on their rooftops and hold guns, and they were protecting their businesses.
Wow.
Because there was a lot of, like, race tensions around that time that was escalating. So I thought that was really interesting to include that specific footage because, as I said, is the purge really dystopian?
Yeah, exactly. If they're using real footage, yeah, like what?
Because I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Is this, like, supposed to be footage from previous purges? Well, no, but it's real footage of people protecting their stores from white supremacists and, people that wanted to eradicate minors.
Yeah.
So, and the last one that I thought was really cool, that I liked, the writer, his name is DeMonico, he admitted in multiple interviews to being obsessed with the Manson family, and you see that in a lot of his works. So some of the polite strangers, they wear the white flowery dresses.
That's right, yeah.
That's supposed to resemble the cult.
Cool.
And the really fun thing is the main villain at the door, the polite stranger leader.
Yes.
He was specifically casted because he reminded the writer of Charles Manson.
Wow.
He was casted one day before shooting began.
Wow. He had the creepiest smile.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
excellent casting choice. But
Manson
like
vibes.
the creepiest smile.
Yeah. When I heard the Manson thing, I was like, yeah, okay, it all makes sense.
It does make sense because, yeah, like even when I think Charlie's watching the security footage, they're like swinging on the swing, they're like skipping, they're like playing with their knives, they're kissing each other. You're like, this is just so unsettling. Like, just to see that, you're like, they're gonna kill me.
The last segment. This is the portion of our show where we discuss books that we think go along with the movie, whether that's content or form or whatever we feel like. 'Cause this is just for fun anyway. Okay, so my book. I read fiction like a normal person.
Shade.
So, an obvious answer if we're going with a dystopian America, I could have just pulled out the Hunger Games and left it at that.
True.
But I wanted to pick something that challenged us a little bit more. So I have decided to choose Stephen King's The Long Walk.
Ooh.
The Long Walk. If you are wondering, it says Stephen King here, but the original book is published under his, what was that writing name? Pseudonym, thank you. Richard Bachman, if you wanted to find it in the library. This also kind of discusses politics, party-controlled events. The basis of this book is that 100 teenage boys walk until there's only one left standing. The last boy left walking gets a large sum of money and any prize of his choice. If they fall between a certain like miles per hour walking, they are shot in the back of the head and they die. So yeah, this is like things I have written down here. These boys like play into this game that this party created, but like, is it worth it in the end? Right? Which I kind of got into Purge. Like, is purging really worth it? Like, what's the thing? This quest for self-discovery. And then the thing that I also like is like the protagonist. I'll say, because I want you to read the book, I'll say succeeds through certain trials with the help from the like collective. So the 100 people in his group. So even though they're all fighting against each other technically to win, there's still that like, you know, the people with guns following you, they are the true evil. They are the political party that encourages this game to happen. And there's still like the collective versus the party. So I really like that about this book. And the fact that like, yeah, success is not individual, which we kind of see in the Purge as well.
Yeah,
those
that's a
themes.
good. Yeah, it's a good option right there. Very
Yeah, Stephen King, a classic.
cool. A classic. We love that man. So I read nonfiction books. So sorry, Sophia.
What?
But my book choice was Race After Technology here. So it's a nonfiction book, and it's talking a lot about like this is more of a modern take on AI and technology in general, and how as a society we keep integrating aspects of technology and AI, but we're not taught to be very mindful or critical about where this technology is coming from, who's programming this technology. And this book talks about the aspects of race and the intersectionalities that we kind of talked about in the movie analysis there, and how race has even permeated that, right? Because in terms of like algorithms, someone still needs to create those algorithms, and there's going to be stereotypes and biases that come out in these sorts of algorithms and whatnot. So the reason why I suggest this book is because it kind of gives a more in-depth look about some of like the racial inequities that are going on in America specifically. It talks about the new Jim Code. But yeah, really interesting stuff. with that.
Wow, non-fiction.
Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Please let us know in the comments what movie you want to hear from us to talk about next.
Sounds good. Yes, if you want to support this channel further, you can follow me on social media. You can leave a like on this video, share it with your friends. We love doing this and we have so much fun doing it.
Smash that dislike button.
Whoa, wait a second. Wait. Just kidding. All the links will be listed below. If you want to support this channel even further, you can buy me a book off my Amazon wish list.
Okay, bye.